What's up, everybody? Now, look, I understand setting up your first piece of analog gear, it can be a daunting process because you're not really too sure where to begin. And especially if we're talking about a channel strip with all of the different knobs and buttons, it can be a little bit intimidating at first. However, with this video, my goal is to make you proficient on the Art Pro channel so that there are no more questions. You can dive straight into this thing and get some good results starting right now. So guys, with that being said, this is going to be the most comprehensive guide on YouTube on how to use the Art Pro channel. With all that being said, let's not waste any more of your guys' time. Let's jump straight into it. All right, so first things first, guys, when you turn this thing on, you're gonna wanna let this sit for about 5 to 10 minutes and let the hardware heat up. There are tubes inside this unit that need to get hot in order for it to function properly. So you never want to just turn this thing on and then immediately start recording. You're not going to get as good of results as if you would have just let it sit for 5 to 10 minutes. So let's kind of just break down what we're even looking at. This channel strip is broken down into 3 different sections. You have the preamp, the compressor, and the EQ. So the first thing we're going to want to pay attention to is the preamp. We're going to need to get our levels set correctly first prior to going into the compressor and the EQ. And to do this, guys, super simple, straightforward. So let's just dive straight into it. So depending on the kind of microphone you're using, that's going to determine whether or not you're going to need to turn on the phantom power. I'm using the AT2020, so in my case I am. And if you're using a dynamic microphone, say the SM7B or the SM58 for example, well, in that case you're going to want to turn this on. You would click this button in. Because I'm using a condenser microphone, I'm not going to need to turn this on. I just know from experience I'm not going to be needing this. So what I'm going to do is start by turning this low cut all the way down, and I'm going to start feeding some gain into the microphone. So if we start to turn this up, you're going to notice that we're going to start getting a little bit of movement down here on the level and on the VU meter. So if I crank this thing all the way up, you can see that right now we're peaking right into this warm section around minus 6 to -4 is where it's peaking. And I actually do like where that is. I don't really want this thing to go into this clipping section. I just want it to be somewhere around in this yellow zone. That means that we're hitting these tubes enough to get a warm signal. Sorry about that, I was talking and then all of a sudden one of my daughter's toys just started going off. So anyways guys, so with our gain turned up and now that we're hitting this yellow section on this little meter down here, that is exactly where we want to be. So if you're in this zone after turning your gain up, perfect. If you're not, then you're going to need to turn on this extra gain and then dial back on this in order to get you right into that yellow zone. The next step is going to be increasing the output gain of the preamp. And the way to do this is by using this knob right here. So I'm going to go ahead and start increasing this until the signal gets loud enough. And I find right about here in this case right now for me sitting down and recording, this is perfect. I'm hitting right around -9 to -6 dBFS inside the DAW. So this is a loud enough signal to where we're not going to clip in the DAW and we're not going to be clipping inside the Pro channel. Now you can clip in the Pro channel and that's fine. If you want to get some saturation, you can absolutely do that. It's totally up to you. However, this is if you want to get the most cleanest results possible. This is the way you're going to do this, especially on vocals in my opinion. You want some very clean vocals, follow this. So now that we have the gain established, let's go ahead and engage this low cut. And for me, I find that right between 65 and 100 is perfect. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna leave it right there. I think that sounds pretty good. The low cut is essentially going to remove any of that rumbling noise that you hear in the distance. So stuff that we do not need for the recording. And just like that, guys, you have your preamp set up for the best possible recordings. Now, if you don't wanna record with compression and EQ, you can stop right here. However, if you wanna record with a little bit of compression, well, let's keep going. So when it comes to recording with compression, this is entirely up to you. You can decide how much compression, if any, that you want to do. And in my case, whenever I'm recording vocals, I find that a 2-to-1 or a 3-to-1 is the best. All right, so I'm going to engage the fast attack and fast release on this compressor, 2-to-1 ratio, and I'm going to start dialing this in until I'm starting to get around, -4 to -6 dB of gain reduction. So the way that you would do this, just demo your microphone, speak into the microphone, and once you notice that you start getting -4 to -6 dB of gain reduction, this is where I would stop. I wouldn't go any more than that. I would just keep it right there because it's a minimal amount of compression to where, say you over compress going into the DAW, you can't change that. Like, it's baked into the recording. So if you're using a minimal amount of gain reduction and especially a low to one ratio, then if you do end up compressing by quite a bit, say you hit like -8, -10, it's not going to be that big of a deal. It's not as noticeable. So I would just say stick to around -4 to -6 dB of gain reduction. And once we hit that, which I know right now I'm getting about -4 to -6, and this is where I'm going to stop. Now we're going to use this compressor output right here to make up for that gain reduction that we just did. So in my case, probably 1 or 2 clicks over, and I'm going to be right back to where I was prior to compressing. So one thing that you should be doing with your compressor is matching the gain. So we're going to go ahead and just bypass this. Listen to how it sounds, speak into the microphone, notice how loud it sounds in the headphones, and then we can go ahead and bring the compressor back in. And if it sounds like it's the same level, in other words, it's not louder than that previous signal or quieter, then that's perfect. You know that you just matched your gain. So this to me sounds really good. I'm gonna go ahead and leave it right here where it's at. I'm not gonna mess with this. And then the next step would be now using the EQ. Now for me personally, I'm not really a fan of recording with EQ. However, for the sake of this video, let's go ahead and mess around with this thing and have some fun. We're gonna go ahead and bring this in, and now we have the EQ engaged, but we don't really have anything going on here. So first things first, let's go ahead and add a little bit of high-end shine to the recording, and I'm gonna leave it on this 18 kilohertz band, and I'm just gonna start to slowly increase this until I start noticing that we're getting a little bit of shine on the vocal. Now at this current setting, it's probably set to around 2 to 3 dB of gain on this 18 kilohertz. So it's gonna add just a little bit of shine to the recording and cut through in a mix. So to me, if you're gonna record with anything, I would honestly say just a little bit of high-end shine. Just figure out what sounds good for you. I might actually dial this back 1. And then for the rest of this, if you have an annoying frequency in the recording that you want to cut out, you absolutely can. You would just select the frequency that you want to chop out and then turn this up or down. So in this case, I'm increasing the loudness of 50 hertz, but you could also turn it down if you want it to sound a little bit more thin. This is the part where I'm a little hesitant to tell you what to do, because obviously with EQ, it's not a one size fits all approach. It's going to be different for everybody because everybody sounds different. And again, you have different instruments that you're recording that require tweaking the frequencies of that specific source a little bit differently than the other. So for me, honestly, if you want to play it safe, go ahead and just bypass this, and then you can do that in post. You're not baking this into the recording and you're going to be stuck with this in post. That is probably the safest bet. So if you want to mess with this in post and use an EQ in the DAW, that would honestly be my recommendation, just so that you don't mess something up and bake this into the recording. However, if you are experienced, you've done this before, you know what your EQ looks like in the DAW, then just replicate it on here. It's really not that complex. And just like that, guys, you have your Art Pro channel set up the way it should. Not only is this one of the most affordable and better sounding channel strips on the market, it's also one of the easiest to use. It is very simple and straightforward. Whether you're using this Pro channel or the second or third model, they all run the exact same. It's all similar. Now just remember what we talked about: the preamp, compressor, and the EQ. How much gain to supply the preamp so that we're getting enough tube saturation to where it's not going to sound too much. It's still going to sound nice and clean, warm sounding. And then how much compression should you record with, which again, right here, compressing and EQing, this is totally source dependent and up to you. So guys, don't be afraid to sit down and experiment on this thing. Play around with your settings and find something that sounds good on the source that you're recording, because this is not the end all be all setup. You do not have to follow this exactly like you see in the video. This is just how I would personally use it if I was setting it up to record vocals. This is how I would probably go to record each and every single time. So hopefully that sounded good, guys. Let me know what you think of this thing. I'm definitely going to be playing around with this unit a little bit more and experimenting, and definitely more content coming soon on this channel strip. But I do think that's going to wrap it up, so I'll see you all in my next video. Take care, everybody. Peace.